creates one report. He says that he turns it in on May the 24th, a Sunday. 24 hours later, on a Monday, he's created the second report. What is missing from that report? Any mention of alcohol. Why would that be? Mr. Kilpatrick wants you to believe that it's because he's not qualified to opine whether or not alcohol had anything to do with the wreck. Setting aside the fact that it's pretty much common knowledge that alcohol is not going to make your driving any better, I would suggest to you a different reason. The different reason for why that mention of alcohol is missing, ladies and gentlemen, is because it doesn't make Mr. Vega look good. And that's just not what Mr. Kilpatrick is being paid to do. And while that's one incident, and only one incident, and one possibility, what makes it even more obvious is how Mr. Kilpatrick presents this version of events to me. According to Mr. Kilpatrick, this wreck is a movie. This wreck is a movie. It has good parts for Mr. Vega, and it has bad parts for Mr. Vega. And so what does Mr. Kilpatrick do? He fast forwards through the bad parts, he presses play at the good parts, and then when it starts getting bad again, he presses pause again. What do I mean by that? Where does Mr. Kilpatrick's clock start? 2 seconds out from impact. What is he talking about? He's talking about how Mr. Vega is counter steering. He is steering into the yaw, which, as you know, when you have lost control of your vehicle like that, you want to steer in the direction that you were sliding. He is basically trying to tell you that Mr. Vega is responding appropriately to this wreck. What he did not tell you is that Mr. Vega is the one who put himself into that yaw. Nowhere in his opinion did he bring up the fact that a second earlier, Mr. Vega had cut the wheel dramatically to the left and come into contact with Dr. McGinty's vehicle. He just left that part out. But that's not all, ladies and gentlemen. Once you get to about half a second out, when the defendant begins turning into the building, for some reason, he cuts the wheel to the left. That's the only explanation he gives, for some reason. I have a reason for you, ladies and gentlemen. It's because Mr. Vega is under the influence, and he is not able to respond appropriately to the situation he's put himself in. Mr. Kilpatrick is being presented to you with some sort of reasonable doubt, and I suggest to you that this is not what this is. What this is an incredibly unreasonable perspective on this event being dressed up as some sort of reasonable doubt. It is misleading. Do not fall for it. But Dr. McGinty, you've heard that name a lot throughout this trial, and let's say perhaps that you think that he is part of the cause of this wreck. So what? What I have highlighted there is some language. Proximate result means something that is a product of an act occurring or concurring with another. So even if you think that Dr. McGinty was some sort of cause of this wreck, it still doesn't happen unless and until Vega collides with it. The fact that Dr. McGinty may bear some responsibility does not exonerate him. There's nothing in your jury instructions that says that there must be one and only one cause of this wreck. Two people's actions colliding or combining to cause a result is still proximate cause, and Mr. Vega would still bear the responsibility for that. So let's talk about intoxication. I submit to you that he was intoxicated. But I'm not going to ask you just to rely on a number to say that Mr. Vega is intoxicated. I would suggest to you that intoxication is something like a three-legged stool. You take away any one leg, and it's not a stool anymore. It's going to fall over. It's got 3 parts to it. You heard from this Agent Kelly that in addition to toxicology, it's a really good idea to look for behavior on the scene as well as the driving behavior. So let's look at all 3. I would submit to you what you're seeing here is Randy Vega running a stop sign. That's 1. If you look very closely, you can actually see the nose of you can see the nose of Randy Vega's van at Spears Avenue and Frazier right there. What I want you to pay attention to here is when does Mr. Vega begin his turn? He waits until Dr. McGinty is almost off. He had plenty of room to execute that turn. He chose to wait until oncoming traffic was near him. I submit to you that his reaction was delayed there. If you also pay close attention, he stops about a car length short of that stop bar there, which in and of itself, okay, one mistake, but a couple lights later, he's also slightly overshooting in the stop bar. Okay, doors and lane closure sign, we talked about that, but I also want you to pay close attention here. And now, you watch this video one more time. There's Dr. McGinty's truck traveling through the intersection. Nobody follows until Randy Vega follows at the intersection. There's McGinty's truck. Look at the timestamp, 15:15:02. There's Vega's van now entering the intersection, 15:15:08. 6 seconds of delay before he begins moving from that intersection. His responses are delayed too. This isn't driver's ed, but what I would suggest to you is this. This isn't just mere nitpicking. This is a pattern of behavior. This is a series of driver errors within a matter of minutes. Okay? Any one of these things, okay. People are human. People make mistakes. But you add 6 separate errors by Mr. Vega in the span of a couple minutes, I submit to you that that is consistent with him driving like an impaired driver. So what else do we have? He's acting like an impaired driver.
What's your name, sir? What are you doing? I'm looking to see what your name is.
I didn't give you permission to go in my wallet.
You don't have to give me permission. I'm going to check this out.
I do have to give you fucking permission.
What's your name?
I'm not no fucking authority to call my fucking wallet.
I've been talking to you this entire time. You're not going to give me an attitude.
What's your name?
Okay. What's your name?
You could ask me.
I did.
Not search through my wallet.
Do not give me an attitude.
Let's start over. What's your name?
Well, let's start over. Come get down to my level.
Listen to me.
That's not going to happen today.
Oh, it's not going to happen today.
Listen to me.
I'll call the cops.
You're already here. So what's your name? I'm going to ask you one more time.
You didn't have
You're going to be detained. I've been talking to you this entire time. So has he. So you're going to be respectful so we can help you. What's your
He
first
didn't have to
name?
be disrespectful going into my pocket.
What's your first name? What's your first name? What's your first name? Come over him. Give me your wallet. You're starting to get a little aggressive right now. Not really sure why. We're all here trying to help you out.
I've been holding my pocket.
I've been talking to you this entire time. You've been like asleep over here. So,
Well, that's because I'm hurt.
oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that because you weren't talking to me. So, huh? Yes, please. Thank you. Just get a little.
You're under arrest.
Hands up people right now, sir. What's your first name?
Lily.
What's your first name?
That comfortable friend on the left side.
Not built for comfort here.
Okay, well, you can have the cup on the left side, and then I'll be able to help you.
We tried that. We tried that, and now here we are. So,
And then fuck you.
alright. Oh, well, he's under arrest right now because he's
Listen up the left cuff or else fuck you.
Okay.
Yeah, I built this motherfucker. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran. You work for me. You work for fucking me. Alright? You work for me. What's my word? No, you fucking don't. You just fucking, you my servant. You my servant.
I'd just like to point out that telling the one black man on scene that he is, quote, your servant is probably not very good judgment. I would also submit to you that Randy Vega didn't build anything there, but if you pay close attention to the proof, you notice about 10 feet behind him is a dead child's brain. Look at how he is reacting in that situation. Nothing about that is appropriate. Nothing about that makes any sense. But more importantly, if you paid attention to Kayla Kelly's testimony, one thing she told you is that a sudden shift from lethargic to awake, alert, and aggressive would be consistent with somebody being under the influence. That's exactly what you have here. You have them going from calm, almost asleep, I think is how it was described, to that belligerent behavior. He doesn't just do it there, though, ladies and gentlemen. The officers leave, and then they come back.
DC, Jesse,
He's trying to antagonize Officer Busey, and here he is with Officer Cortez.
you got my car. You searched me without my consent. What's your name? Cortez?
Yep. You said it right.
Well, Private Cortez?
No, not private.
Officer, law enforcement officer, same shit.
That works.
Continues antagonizing the officers. And of course, we have Mr. Vega vomiting. People in wrecks may sometimes vomit. People experiencing symptoms of shock, I think what the testimony was, is that is potential. But Agent Kelly testified that it would also be consistent with somebody to have a blood alcohol concentration of 0.13 and vomit. And that's what you have here. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, is toxicology. An hour after the wreck is a 0.131. 4 hours after the wreck is a 0.087. If you look like a duck, you quack like a duck, and you walk like a duck, ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that you were a duck. Mr. Vega is driving like a drunk, he is acting like a drunk, and he has the blood alcohol concentration of a drunk. He is under the influence, not just an hour after the fact, but when this wreck occurred. But I've talked an awful lot about his reckless behavior and how his recklessness was the cause of the wreck. And Ms. Hayden told you in her opening statement correctly, you can be DUI while not also being responsible for a wreck. So why would his intoxication be the proximate cause of this wreck? And to answer that, I will show you this video one last time. Both drivers quickly go off that stop bar. They both give it all the gas that they've got. But one thing I want you to look at is where is Dr. McGinty's vehicle positioned the entire time? At no point during that encounter does Randy Vega ever have the room to get over. He and Dr. McGinty are neck and neck until Randy Vega pulls slightly ahead. Setting aside the fact that it is always a bad idea to sit there and try to cut another driver off, if you're going to do that, at least make sure that there's not another car in the way so you don't run into it. Randy Vega either did not perceive it because he couldn't divide his attention between maintaining control of his vehicle and monitoring Dr. McGinty's position, or he misjudged Dr. McGinty's position. That is why this isn't just mere recklessness. This is impairment. To put it in plain English, he tried to cut Dr. McGinty off and he messed it up. He botched it, he wrecked, and 2 people are dead because of that. I told you at the outset, ladies and gentlemen, that Randy Vega's anger explains why this tragedy unfolded. His intoxication explains how. That is why he's guilty, not just of reckless conduct, but of vehicular homicide by intoxication. Thank you. Mr. Vega.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. It's been a long week. Appreciate you being attentive. It's important to Mr. Vega in this case. There's a lot of evidence in this case. There's a lot to talk about. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm going to try not to go any longer than I need to. But this is important for Mr. Vega, and it's important for me to explain to you how we analyze this evidence. What did the state tell you in their opening argument? Randy Vega slowly pulled out into traffic on Frazier Boulevard. It actually wasn't Frazier Boulevard, it was Cherokee Boulevard. Remember, you just saw it with the dash cam of Dr. McGinty's truck. The buildings there on the Spears are right next to the road, so there's not really a good viewpoint there. So when you pull out on Cherokee Boulevard, you've got to stop and pull out, and that's what Mr. Vega was in the process of doing when when Dr. McGinty was approaching him. Recall, this is just right after Dr. McGinty has passed a car going 50 miles an hour. He does have to slow down. So the state says that Randy Vega apparently took offense to this. So there's no proof of that. There's no proof of that. They can say that. They can try and make connections in this case with some of the evidence, but there is no proof that Randy Vega was ever angry at Dr. McGinty. None. He ignored a lane merger sign in order to pull alongside Mr. McGinty. That's a statement by the state. There's no proof of that. There's no proof he ignored any sign. Dr. McGinty had no reason to believe that anything was even wrong. This is where they're at the Woodline stop sign, or the Woodline traffic light. Well, in the statement that Dr. McGinty wrote right on the scene, he said that it might be mad at me, talking about Vega, it might be mad at me because I got back in front of him back after Manufacturers Row. Randy Vega got there and made his anger known. We saw the video between Frazier Avenue, the store, that showed the two cars. We just saw it. The two cars pull up. The one where Mr. Boers is talking about how he stopped one. That evidence was introduced through Sergeant Molinax. Molinax was asked, anything unusual there? No. There's nothing there. There's no proof there at that red line on Woodline in front of the store that Mr. Vega was angry. There's no proof of that. None. Randy Vega quickly overtook Mr. McGinty's vehicle. This is after the light turns green on Woodline. Overtook, passed, however you want to say it. It's clear in that dash cam video that Vega pulled ahead of Dr. McGinty. Pulled ahead. You can see his rear. You can see the rear of the van in that dash cam. Pulled ahead of it. So that I agree with. So there's an apparent attempt to cut him off, rapidly cut his wheel approximately 30 degrees. I don't know about 30 degrees or how it was explained to you about this 30 degrees being abrupt. In the dash cam video, you don't see an abrupt move. You just see a change to the left lane in the van. It's not an abrupt, it's just a turn. And then in his opening statement, he said that when he made that lane change, he collided with Dr. McGinty's vehicle. Well, that was not what the proof showed in this case. That he came in contact the minute he merged. The contact came a few seconds later. Comment was made in opening argument that Randy Vega's anger explains why this tragedy unfolded. Again, there is no proof of any anger in the driving sequence of this case. You're going to hear from the folks who investigated this crash. Who you did not hear from is Investigator Caddy, who was the lead investigator in this case. The lead investigator in this case did not sit at counsel table during the trial, and the state did not put him on to testify. But chose no, they didn't want him to testify. Also, in opening argument, we were told that Randy Vega's vehicle had a dash camera, but there's no proof of that. Dr. McGinty had a dash camera, we know that. Maybe that's what he's referring to. In his opening statement, he doesn't mention anything about the stopping watch video, nor does he mention the truckload of statements made by Dr. McGinty. Didn't tell you that in opening statement that those statements were going to come in. we told you in our opening statement that the state was going to focus on what happened after McGinty's truck collided with Randy Vega's van, sending him off the road into 3 pedestrians in a building. You heard and saw a lot about these 2 terrible, tragic deaths of Anna and Jonathan and the injuries to Mr. Paz. We're not disputing any of that. That happened. We're dead. And it's a shame. It's tragic. I feel sorry for Mr. Paz for losing his family. As we told you, this case is about whether Randy caused the accident. That's been our main focus this entire trial, is who caused this accident. And I'm talking about who caused that van to go into that building, and in between that building, hitting those pedestrians. What actually caused Randy Vega's van to leave the lane? Joe Warden told you, but for Randy changing lanes, his van would not have left the road. Well, I submit you disagree with that. That's not what the proof shows. People change lanes all the time without people dying. Had Dr. McGinty not hit the gas, those are his words, not hit the gas, the 2 never would have collided. We also told you in the opening statement that this case needs to be analyzed in 2 phases. That the state can prove to you the state prove to you by reasonable doubt that Randy Vega was impaired by alcohol, but his blood alcohol level was over 0.08 when he drove his car. And were Randy's actions proximate cause of the accident? The instructions, and the law, I'm careful about telling you about the law in my closing argument, because the judge has already read through the law, and the state has given you a little bit of law today. But they've got to prove 3 elements for reckless homicide. The defendant killed the alleged victim by operation of the motor vehicle, and the defendant acted recklessly, and that the killing was the proximate cause of the result of the driver's intoxication. That's what the state has to prove to you. Proximate result, which we refer to as proximate cause in this trial, means a result which in a natural and continuous sequence is a product of an act occurring or occurring with another, which had it not happened, the result would have not occurred. Well, we have more than just Mr. Vega's driving case. We have Mr. Dr. McGinty's driving in this case. In fact, I don't how you argue this, how you talk about it, you have to look at the actions of Dr. McGinty. No way to distinguish between behaviors due to trauma from signs of impairment. We know that at the scene, we just saw it, we were reminded of it. Randy Vega, combat veteran, has PTSD, it's in his records. He hits the building going a little over 50 miles an hour, I think anywhere from 52 to 58, depending on what number you rely on. Mr. Du Bois arrives on the scene. He testified in this case. He's a volunteer. He wants to help. He helps Mr. Vega out of the vehicle, and he ends up on the sidewalk. Okay. Non-responsive, Mr. Du Bois said. He was non-responsive. That was his term. When does he become responsive? When he feels somebody going around filling in his pockets. Okay. And it does alert him. Makes him a little more active, a little more aggressive. What's around him? There's transmission fluid underneath him. He's sitting in it. You can smell it. There's dust. There's an airbag that deployed in his face. There's rubble. There's brick. There are people walking around with uniforms. At one point, he refers to Officer Cortez as a private. I don't know what's going on there, but if the man is in shock and he comes to and he's in an environment that he's seen in the past, it may trigger something in his head. I don't know if that's what happened here, but it is a possibility, and it creates reasonable doubt in your mind. The officer who was sent to investigate the impairment, Ryan Lynn, who was recalled twice in this case, only interviewed Randy at the hospital. Spent a few minutes with him. Did not detect an odor of alcohol. He did detect an odor, but it was a man who had just been laying in transmission fluid for a little bit. Okay? And other fluids from a car. It was an odor, but he did not say alcohol. know whether, at the time of the interview, that Dr. Vega had been given any medication at the hospital. He did say that he had glassy eyes and strange odors, but it wasn't alcohol. Remember the supervisor with EMS in the body cam video? Remember him? They were going around pouring granules around and they're coming up all that fluid. There was not an admission of drinking from Mr. Vega in this interview. Officer Lynn couldn't even tell you who drew the blood. He swore under oath to the wrong name. Reasonable doubt as to his entire investigation I will submit to you. And why do I bring that up? Just because you saw that. He takes the stand, Officer Lynn. I'm not saying anything bad about Officer Lynn. I'm just talking about what his testimony was in this trial. In this trial. He stood there, he had no report. He said he had no report. We asked him that, he had no report. And he was going from memory, and he was certain that whoever drew that blood, that person's name was Lindsay. What else was he certain about? That was incorrect. We don't know. Had to be brought in the next day to clarify that up. That it was a fellow named Michael, not Lindsay, that drew the blood. You have the medical records. Nowhere in the medical records is mentioned alcohol. The hospital did not run an alcohol test. You'd have it if they did. No one at the hospital suspected alcohol impairment. He was being treated for trauma. You also heard that from the EMT. And this is from the medical records. On the bottom, final impressions, trauma, unspecified altered mental status after a motor vehicle collision. Medical records the state put into evidence show a few more things worth noting. You had PTSD, highlighted in yellow. You had a traumatic brain injury in 2019, shown on page 86 of the medical records. TBI. Dr. McGinty testified that Randy was in shock. And he listed the symptoms. He said glassy-eyed and dry heaving. Medical doctor on scene, trying to help. I'm not saying Dr. McGinty is a bad doctor. I'm not saying he's a bad man. We just know what his actions were that day. But he became a medical doctor right after the accident again, and he decided he was in shock. And he said the other symptoms of shock include vomiting, dizziness, confusion, potential loss of consciousness, irritability, and disorientation. Those investigating the accident ignored these facts. Dr. McGinty was given an opportunity to give a written statement at the scene. He's writing a written statement at the scene, or Randy was being handcuffed because of his behavior, because the officer didn't appreciate what he said. He's not been treated by medical personnel at this point. Then while Randy was handcuffed for cursing at an officer, the firefighter reached into his pocket to take that wallet out. Just remember what I said earlier, we've seen his history, his background. It's not uncommon or unusual for a soldier to curse. Randy is arrested at the hospital. Mr. McGinty was given an opportunity on the same day, 4 days later, where he hired an attorney to give an interview at his convenience on Signal Mountain, where he lives. At the scene, Dr. McGinty was given no field sobriety test. His blood was not drawn. You know, why would they need to do that? Well, because of the statement on scene. He said he sped up. I wasn't going to let him in front of him. It was a homicide investigation. Let him go home. And just to point out, okay, what did he say in that interview on Signal Mountain? So this thing, didn't want him to get in front of me. I was speeding too fast for conditions. I decided to accelerate to keep him from taking the lane. This car left ahead and in front of me. I agree with that. I hit the gas. I accelerated. These are words from Dr. McGinty. I was acting to the caravan's acceleration. That is the way my brain is wired. My speed was absolutely not safe. Mr. Warren asked Dr. McGinty, if it wasn't for you being there, I don't think this crash would have happened. It's Joe Warren talking to him. Dr. McGinty's response, that's what's eating at me. That's what's eating at me. Randy told medical personnel what he believed happened. Page 42 of the medical records. Stacy was driving and was hit from behind when he lost control of his car and hit a building. Pretty much sums it up. I think I can argue this man has faced two different systems of justice this far. Let's get back to the alcohol issue. Note that no one on the scene testified that Randy smelled like alcohol. The only person that says he smelled alcohol was Dr. McGinty, and that was 2.5 years later on the witness stand. That helps him. Dr. McGinty didn't mention the smell of alcohol in his written statement that he made on scenes. As I said earlier, Mr. Boyd, who helped him get out the vehicle, didn't smell alcohol. Officer Cortez, who was upset with him, used her handcuffs on her first day of the job, never mentioned alcohol. She would have done that if she smelled it. She was with him for quite a long time. She held his hand. He squeezed her hand. She comforted him. The EMS team, paramedics, no mention of alcohol. Officer Alexander, who rode in the ambulance with Randy, made no mention of alcohol. Only Dr. McGinty 2.5 years later. The state has not been able to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Randy was impaired. There's other factors here. There is the shock and the disorientation that he had right after the accident that could explain some of those things that you see that you just saw. Too many other plausible explanations for his behaviors. That's reasonable doubt. I submit to you, that's reasonable doubt. So you have blood vials from the hospital that do not match. These are evidence. Date of birth 6/28/79 on those. Date of birth 10/28/79. Different birthday. Is this his blood? The state had Ms. Kelly read from a medical record that a mistake was made to his birthday. Okay. So the state's going to clear this up, and they're going to have the TBI agent read the medical records from Erlanger to clear up that. They don't bring somebody from Erlanger to explain it. Okay, what causes the date of birth to be wrong? What else is wrong? How did that happen? What else is wrong? It creates reasonable doubt as to what if it's his blood. It just does. If you had someone from earlier that came in and said, okay, this is what happens when this happens. This is why it happened. Somebody from earlier said, this is why the date is wrong. This is when we discovered it. You think it happened explain it to you. That wasn't done. If anyone's been in a hospital lately, you can't get an aspirin without double checking what your birth date is, which name is. Like repeating your birthday correctly. The state didn't even address it except have the TV agent read the records. Oh, what kind of mistake was corrected? We brought that up. Ms. Haley brought it up through cross-examination. Kayla Kelly went through the entire testimony without mentioning to you the labels had an error. Hannah Adams, TBI, who was supposed to check for errors, either didn't tell you or didn't notice it. That's sloppy forensic work. I submit to you. We should not tolerate that type of sloppy forensic work in a homicide trial. The state has the burden. They have to prove to you a blood result beyond reasonable doubt. Remember, Officer Lynn couldn't even tell you the correct name. I've already talked about the person with blood. They had to recall it. Mr. Satterfield didn't know the name of. Now, Mr. Satterfield is the medical student who testified. He observed the blood draw. He didn't do it. He deserved it. He was handed the bag and went off and delivered it to another place. He told you there were procedures for medical draws. That the blood has to be drawn in a specific order based on the color of the tubes. He told you that that order was important because of contamination. He couldn't remember the order. They couldn't tell you that it was done properly, nor should he have been able to. He wasn't the person who drew the blood. The state chose not to call the witness who could have testified to that. Who drew the blood? Why did they not do that? I don't have that answer for you. Reasonable doubt as to the validity of the blood test. They left open too many questions for you. They have not proven a number to you beyond reasonable doubt. That's not all. They can't prove to you what his blood alcohol content, even if you rely on the blood, what his alcohol content was at the time of the accident. The blood was drawn an hour or so later. You don't know about his absorption rate. You don't know that before he got in that car, if he had anything to drink, how soon it was. Did the elevation climb high? If it's his blood, did the elevation climb higher when he got by the time he got to the hospital? I'll tell you it follows, who was a first face witness, who I mentioned earlier, tragic. Unfortunately, he does not remember the accident. There was no testimony about the cause of the accident. Mr. Skiles, a street preacher, with some bad hearing, but otherwise he had some statements to say about it. He was walking toward the sidewalk, sees a van in front of a truck. He sees a van in front of a truck. Van's in the right lane, truck is in the left lane. Then he's not looking, he's turned away. He hears a crash, turns, sees van coming off the truck. That's his testimony. Concerned him so much that he did not want to begin to leave the scene. He took pictures of his truck, his license plate. That was the impression he had. As I talked about Mr. Du Bois, he heard metal screeching sounds. I would submit to you that is the point of impact. He ran to render he saw that the van hit the building. He saw a dent in the front right side of the truck. The truck driver was shaken. He checked the van driver, opened the door. The driver seemed in shock. Moved away from the vehicle, but before that he helped him out. He said he was not responsive, as I said earlier. And then he went on to describe what he saw at the scene. Sergeant Molinex testifies as a sergeant of traffic enforcement across the city, trained accident reconstructionist, although he didn't prepare an accident reconstruction report in this case. He did not do any physical measurements. And then he introduced a load of evidence through photographs and whatnot. Very important for you to see all of that. That's part of the case. You're entitled to all that. You should be able to do that and use that in your decision making in this case. But the photos of the truck, the building damage, the video that we saw from inside the Walnut Street gift shop, photo from inside the stores I'm referring to, none of that proves causation. It is just the after effects of this case. We did see, this is where we were able to see the Masonic Lodge video and the dash cam videos. Those are important. The Masonic Lodge video is actually remarkable in my opinion. Then we saw the photographs we don't want to see in this case. To show the results of this impact. So slowing down and running a stop sign, we're going to go back to that. So you saw it on the chart earlier in this case, but Molex is going to tell you that Randy Vega ran a stop sign at the intersection of Kent and Spears. The shape of that road was angled to the left. If you pull up about Kent, stop at the stop sign, you look to the right, you see Spears, it's angled to the left. I had to ask Sergeant Molex several times about that, and I suggested it does angle to the left. But in the video, what you see is when it slowly pulls up to that intersection and has to look right, there's a car parked there. Now, we don't know what's behind it because the video's cut off of it. But we know that parallel parking goes all the way down the street. And it obstructs anybody's view there. So anybody that drives through that intersection has got to roll out and take a right and take a look. Your view is obstructed. Then he takes a left-hand turn, Mr. Vega does, and proceeds toward Cherokee. Nothing unusual about that drive. Straight line, he drives straight. Now, we don't see anything else about the Vega until we see it in the dash cam. Now, explain that to you. Those two buildings on each side of Spears that connects with Cherokee are right against the road. And if you stop at the stop sign, you look right, you're not going to be able to see all the way down. You've got to pull out. You have to pull out before you commit. That's what he did. Pulled out in front of someone that just passed a car going 50 miles an hour. We did not testimony in this case. There were two cuts of video from the dash cam of Dr. McGinty's truck. Two. We saw the second one. We didn't see the first one. We heard about the first one. The state introduced the first one. Talked to Joe Warren about that. And he talked to Dr. McGinty about it in his statement. He talks about, do you remember driving up Dayton Boulevard and a white truck pulling out in front of you? You had to slow down. Yes. Do you remember going through the tunnel? Yes. You remember coming up on a white compact car, that applied its brakes, and you passed that car going around 50 miles an hour. We didn't see that video. They didn't introduce it. They introduced what was next, and that was when Mr. Vega pulls out in front of him. We see the video from Walgreens. It shows nothing but normal driving. So, as a matter of fact, the Walgreens video is a video that our investigator located and found. The state decided to put it on before we could. Sergeant Molnick saw nothing unusual about that video, the Walgreens video. Shows car. If you watch the Walgreens video, it does show Dr. McGinty's pickup truck driving first, and sometime later we see Randy Vega's van. And there's another car behind Randy Vega's van that's traveling around the same speed. And as Dr. Sergeant Molnick said, there's nothing unusual about that video footage. He said there was nothing also unusual about the video footage that followed that from the storefront showing where they stopped at the traffic light. That 22 Frazier Avenue video, I think that is where we're supposed, the state is supposed to prove to you where the anger is displayed by Randy Vega. Sorry, Molnick said there's nothing unusual there. The state did not keep the promise. They did not show any anger from Randy Vega. And then, of course, the second half of the video of the dash cam from Dr. McGinty's truck was given to you. We don't know anything about the camera. We don't know anything about the specifications of the camera. We don't know what the brand name of the camera is. We don't even know. We don't even see the camera. It's not even here. Joe Warren testified there's some limitations to that camera, specifically talking about the GPS. Date's incorrect. I'm not sure what that means and what you should take from that. But if it's got limitations to GPS, what are the kind of limitations it have? We don't know. We don't know. We don't know the timing of how those video frames are captured from by that camera. Now, I mentioned Officer Cortez earlier. She was the next witness. Saw Mr. Vega on the sidewalk, resting on a hand. Not much response. Not much response. He was in pain, groaning, lethargic, not talking, had a pain sound. Complained about his stomach and had abdominal pain. She said the firefighter reached into Randy's pocket. Randy became more alert and began to get loud. I don't know if he got loud, but he did curse. Which is what it is. The soldier is waking up. You don't know what's going on in his head. He was handcuffed because she didn't appreciate the way Randy was moving around. She later clarified that was a mistake. He wasn't under arrest, but he was being detained. But she's still handcuffed. In the body cam, we see Randy in pain. They finally uncuff him and they load him on a stretcher. Before they load him on a stretcher, they put medical devices around his neck, secure his head, put him on a stretcher, put him on a flat board. They do it correctly. They take care of him because he's injured. He went to the hospital, stayed 4 days in the hospital. Another statement of Officer Cortez was that she handcuffed him because he was handsy. I don't know what handsy is. I didn't see handsy in the video unless we're talking about holding his hand. One time he did place his hand on her kneecap, and then when they were getting ready to load him after they handcuffed him, he reached down and grabbed her boot and she said, "Let go of my boot." She was obviously not happy with obviously Mr. Vega at the time. And the officer comes over and yells out, "What's your problem, dude? Look at me. Stand up. Sit up. If we take off the handcuffs, you're going to act appropriately." That's the way they address Randy Vega after he's in his condition. They later find his military ID. Investigator Warren took the stand, testified for a length of time, went into a second day. Also an accident reconstructionist. He was offered as an expert to testify in this case, but he didn't object. been in the force a long time. And I've met him before. We know he's a good officer. I don't agree particularly with his final judgment in this case, but I have no issue that he is an accident reconstructionist. I didn't ask him how much he got paid. I didn't ask him when he was going to get paid. I didn't ask him the other questions that I will talk about later. And as I mentioned before, we have Officer Warren on the stand who's testifying in this case, important things. He has worked all along with the lead investigator, Investigator Cabot, all along. They've gone and they've downloaded the CDR through the Bosch software at the lot on the van. They both together, Warren and Cabot, interviewed Dr. McGinty of Signal Mountain. And they conducted other investigations together. But he did not testify before. He did not come into this court and testify. The state did not put him on. I think it's important because I asked Sergeant Mullinex and Investigator Warren who made the charging decisions in this case. It wasn't me. It wasn't Joe Warren, and it wasn't Sergeant Mullinex who made the charging decisions. I asked both of them. No, I didn't make that decision. So you can infer that Investigator Cabot made that decision. Why did he make that decision? So Warren's testimony got into side swaps. He said, it's more of a side swap. That was one explanation. And we're talking about the two cars when the lane change takes place. And then he says later on, it's basically a side swap. So it's more, it's basically. And then finally he says, it looks to me like a side swap. Looks to me like a side swap. And he references these exchange of scripting and painting in one area of the vehicle. It's either the front quarter panel of the truck or the back quarter panel or bumper of the van. That's where he determines it's a side swap. But he says it's more of a side swap. Basically a side swap. It looks to me like. Let's read it down as to whether it's a side swap. Gary Kirkpatrick said it was not a side swap. It was not. There would be more scraping. He explained to you how it would work. I'm going to hold two hands up and go side by side, side swap until they bounce off each other. So there was discussion about steering into a counteract, accelerating. When you're trying to steer into regaining control by turning right, if your tail end is going right, how is it? What? He says it's not important to have brake. You shouldn't brake. Is what Joe Warren said. But okay, that's it. If you're driving your car, you lose control, you try to regain it. Okay, that's standing along. But how do you regain control of the car when the truck is in your rear bumper? You have to put the two together. Joseph Warren said the van moved into Nissan's lane. It's fair to say that the initiated contact. It's fair to say that the initiated contact. That was his statement. He says that without including or commenting on Dr. McGinty's mental thinking, that factor, his intent, his willful intent to hit the gas and speed up. He doesn't talk about it. Actually, they ignore it for the most part. They ignore it. It appears the Dodge went into the left lane. It appears that the Dodge went into the left lane, Joe Warren said. The Dodge did go into the left lane. We're not disputing that. tried to go through the website. A lot of information about Lycan. I'm not going to review that. A lot of information about how his investigation took place. You've heard all that. You can rely on that. You can remember that. I'm not going to point anything out about that. I don't have any issues with the use of Lycan, the use of instruments and things to measure and how you how one who's an expert in construction conducts his analysis. So Joe Warren says, couldn't I be an impact point with only a general area? Well, that's the testimony. While the state's asking questions, I couldn't identify an impact area, but I can identify the general area. So what's the state's next question? Where's that general area? He didn't ask that question. Why didn't he ask the question? Why didn't he want you to know where the general area was, where the impact was? Take him up to a certain point and you stop. Yeah, there was contact. I know the general area, but we're not going to tell you where. A lot of discussion about airbag deployment, how that activates the black box in the van. Speed, according to Joe Warren, at 5 seconds, which is before the impact, is at 55% throttle. We don't know what that means. It's just that it's halfway down. I don't know what the speed is. 4 seconds is 55, 3 seconds is 62 at 70, and then at 1 it's 100%. We get into this discussion about that. Joe Warren says that doesn't make sense. Talking about brake being pushed down to 100%. It doesn't make sense. I agree. It doesn't make sense unless you think about it. First of all, the vehicle is, at this point, is out of control. So anything can happen when your vehicle is out of control. He says it doesn't make sense. I asked him, well, does it make sense for Dr. McGinty to hit the gas? We'll have to rely on that answer. And at some point, Joe Warren admitted that he did not line up, his figures didn't line up with what the CPR did. And that's when accident reconstructions or engineers or rocket scientists, whoever are doing reports, they're going to look at everything. And they're going to write everything down. Okay? And it doesn't necessarily mean that everything in the report has to do with the cause of the accident or whatever they're trying to determine. But they look at everything. So I'm going to go back. So we talk about this braking. Warren doesn't know. Maybe the foot came off, the foot came over and touched the brake pedal. That's one explanation. We know that the brake light on the van came on, the tail lights. We know they came on. We saw it in the video. There's no dispute about that. The brake light on the back of the van turned on. They were activated. But the CDR report tells us, well, that's the case, but the brakes were not applied. Okay. So we have something touched the brakes, and so Warren says maybe the foot came over and touched the brake pedal. Maybe we don't know that. Well, maybe while losing control, Randy Vega decides to slam on the brakes, and while he's losing control, his foot slips and goes to slam on the brakes, doesn't hit the brake pedal correctly. Or because the car's out of control, it slips off the brake, hits the gas, and goes all the way down. That's another possible solution here, or reason why this is 100%. We don't know. We don't know. So Joe Warren says there's no meaningful attempt to stop. He's talking about Randy Vega and the van. There's no meaningful attempt to stop. Well, a little harder when you get a truck on your rear bumper. What about Dr. McGinty? No meaningful attempt to stop? So the conclusion of Joe Warren, excessive speed and improper lane change. That's what caused this accident. So then he was asked the question, did Dr. McGinty appropriately apply his brakes, come to a stop quickly after the crash? What's the point of that question? Does it make you think he tried to stop beforehand? I don't know what the point of that question is. But we do know they appropriately stopped after the crash. Joseph Warren, on cross-examination, in the 5 seconds, there is a lot of data. Yes, there is. There's a lot of data in this 5 seconds. A lot. Look, I used to think, well, I was watching the Olympics, and watch swimmers swim down the lane, and someone would beat somebody else by 0.01. How do they do that? How do they time that? A second to me is enough. I divide seconds up in 1,200 milliseconds. A lot of data in a short amount of time. Yaw marks indicate the van was out of control. I agree with the van being out of control. The question is, why was it out of control? Investigator Warren said it made sense for Dr. McGinty to hit the gas for the reason he told him. That's what he said on the stand. Investigator Warren said it made sense for Dr. McGinty to hit the gas for the reason he told him. And what was the reason? Dread. Fear. That's a good reason to hit your gas? It's bad. Accident reconstruction says that it's okay to hit the gas under those circumstances. Yeah. Joe Warren said it looked like the impact was happening early in the Masonic Lodge. But it did look like. I look at it, and when in that Masonic Lodge video, when those vehicles come into view, it looks like they're making contact. I mean, it looks like, to me, it looks like they're pushing, the truck is pushing the van, or either the van is trying to speed up and the truck is catching up with them. Could be, I don't know, who knows what's going on. But it looks like there's some contact. I asked Sergeant Molex, where's the contact? They went through this with him. Where's the contact? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Could be. I don't know. I don't know what the contact is. But there was contact. That was his testimony. Joe Warren doesn't know why at the last minute that wheel turned left. He doesn't know. He doesn't know why. We don't know. No one knows why. We don't know why he turned right. We assume or think maybe he was trying to counteract the out-of-control vehicle. But he's inside the vehicle and it's out of control. Does it actually mean that he actually turned the wheel himself? If the vehicle's out of control and it's pushing forward, maybe the wheel's just going. Maybe the wheel just turns. Maybe he has no control over the wheel at this point. We don't know. But those are possibilities. And because of that, that's reasonable doubt. And again, I remind you, Joseph Warren was not involved in making a decision and who was charged in this case. Now, we talked to Joseph Warren about his conversation he had with Dr. McGinty 4 days later, and what he asked. You've heard the statements he said in that statement. On the stand, Dr. McGinty, for the most part, agreed with everything that I said. And what he didn't agree with it, I had to show him and remind him about the things that he said. What caused him? He said it. Okay, I looked over. He's looking at me. He's looking at me. Dread, fear overcomes him. Well, he saw, he looks over, maybe he saw Randy Vega indicating him, hey, gotta come over. I don't know. I'm not saying that's what happened. Well, we don't know what the communication, but Dr. Briganti in his head thinks that, well, I did cut him off back after manufacturer tour. Because he put that in the statement. I think he did that. That's in Dr. McGinty's head. There's no evidence or proof of that, but that's in Dr. McGinty's head. Could have been prejudiced. Hard statement to make. He had a hard time saying it in front of you, but it was a statement that he made. That was another reason it could have been. I may come back to that statement, or the statements of Dr. McGinty. I'll stick them out. Police station. I would characterize all those statements. I'm going to review all those statements. Didn't want to get in front of me. Didn't want him to get in front of me. I was speeding too fast for conditions. I decided to accelerate to keep him from taking the lane. His car left ahead in front of me. I hit the gas. I accelerated. I was acting to the caravan acceleration. This is the way my brain is wired. My speed was absolutely unsafe. That's what's eating at me. I call that a confession. We heard from paramedic, Ms. Toomey. He smelled of alcohol. Vehicle had heavy damage. That would cause altered mental status of anybody who was in that vehicle. William Alexander is the next witness in this case for the state. His testimony did not prove any causation. He did not smell any alcohol. We didn't even cross-examine him. And we made the choice to just try to cross-examine several witnesses because it just didn't affect the important issues in this case. And I talked about Mr. Satterfield already, the medical student, and Ryan Lynn. Claimed it was an honest mistake. He sure was certain the day before. What else was he certain about that he was wrong about? We heard from Sergeant Perez. He delivered the blood to TBI in Nashville. Think about the cause of the accident. Special Agent Kelly, TBI. She missed the date of birth mistake. So we pointed it out to her. The state had her read from medical records, as I talked about it earlier, clear that up. Clear somebody else's mistake up. We bring some special agent TBI to do that. Special Agent Kelly also talked about how, if you are consuming alcohol, how it affects people differently. Including outward effects. She cannot tell you about the absorption of Randy Vega. If he had alcohol. Dr. Cogswell, medical examiner testified. This is a part of the trial. The state has to prove that in a homicide, you have to prove that there are fatalities. You have to prove that. We're not disputing that at all. I mentioned earlier, we're not disputing that at all. And I didn't ask Dr. Cogswell how much money he made. Or when he gets paid. I want to talk about Gary Kilpatrick, the only witness that we placed on the stand. Gary Kilpatrick is an engineer, been an engineer for many years, most of his life. This curriculum, I tell you, is introduced. You can look at it if you want to. Many, many pages of what he's done in his life, in his career. If you took a look at this case, yes, he gets paid $200 an hour. You know what most engineers get paid? $400 or $500 an hour. He cut his rate because he thought this case was interesting. Took this case to help, to let us know the only instructions given to him were what was the cause of this accident. I'm not telling you where to go with it. I've done this in the past with hired engineers. I've used their reports or other experts, and sometimes it doesn't help, so there's no reason to use it. In this case, it did. Why? So his opinion is Mr. McGinty had kept his speed down to 30 miles an hour below and yielded to Vega and this Dodge to continue around him and let him go on his way, this accident would have never taken place. So what does that mean? That means that, in other words, Dr. McGinty had not hit the gas, the accident would not have taken place. That's what he's saying. If he hadn't hit the gas, this accident wouldn't have taken place. I am not so sure that we need an accident reconstruction engineer or rocket science to figure that out. He relied on the data that was provided to him. He relied on the statements that were given. He relied on the data that was given. He relied on the CDR that was downloaded to the Bosch software. He relied on that. He relied on Dr. McGinty's statement. He didn't rely on the allegation of intoxication because we don't know that. But he did put it in his report. And let me just clear something up. There are not two reports. There's one report that was amended. Not two reports. One report was amended. And it was explained to you why. That was not considered in his investigation, in his analysis of this case. He merely looked at the mechanics of this case. Gary Kilpatrick also opined where the impact took place. This is where the impact took place. The impact took place after, according to him, after the vehicles entered into the camera view of the Sonic Lodge, right across from the gate, and went into that parking lot. That was the area of the impact. So according to Dr. Kilpatrick, we have a van that's moved over to the left lane, and there is a truck who has hit the gas and is on his tail. It's bumping. But there's no contact. And that proceeds through that block before it comes into the camera view of the Sonic Lodge video camera. Moves up close to the intersection, and that's where the impact takes place. So what does that mean? That means that Randy Vega pulled ahead, moved over. Dr. McGinty, in his own words, hit the gas, stayed on the gas. I walked it through him during his cross-examination, frame by frame. Are the cars accelerating? Or are you hitting the gas? Yes. Are the cars moving further down Frazier? Are you hitting the gas? Yes, yes. That went on 6 or 7 times. He admits it. And then the point of impact is up close to the intersection, crossing the gate, entering into that parking lot. That's what the contact takes place. So what does it mean? That means Dr. McGinty chased him that far. So the contact of the vehicles is important. If it happens back comes into view, yeah, Randy Vega may have a problem. He didn't move over and then immediately hit the truck. That's not what the evidence shows. State didn't point that out to you. They did not point out to you the general area where the contact took place. The defense did. And it's important because that means that Dr. McGinty chased Mr. Vega down. And in his own words, I hit the gas. I don't want it in front of me. On and on and on. We've got plenty of evidence about his mental thinking. So it finds that this wreck wouldn't have happened if Dr. McGinty hadn't hit the gas. It tells you where the impact took place. That's very important. It also tells you there was not a side spot. That was his opinion, and that's what he testified to. And that was about it. That's all we asked him. So on cross, you work for law enforcement. You know anything about technology, you know anything about medicine, you've been to a wet lab, you've been training DUI offenses, you've been in drug recognition, not familiar with Tennessee law changes, like boom, 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 boom. All get no answers. Okay. Well, okay, let's talk about, is there any evidence of Warren been trained in toxicology? Is there any evidence of Warren being trained in medicine? Is there any Warren attending wet labs? Any proof that Warren attended wet labs or training in DUI offenses? Drug recognition? No. It doesn't matter in this case. That's not the issues in this case. That is merely to get him to say a series of no answers so that you think he doesn't know what he's talking about. Not familiar with Tennessee law and lane changes. No, he's not from Tennessee. He's from North Carolina. He's not here to make a legal conclusion. Let me ask you, have you had any courses in training in vehicle or to pedestrian crashes? Have you been training in vehicle to pedestrian crashes? Oh my gosh, this is going to be a killer. Okay, we can't have this expert if he doesn't know that. Well, Joseph Warren testified that pedestrian accident formulas would not apply in this case. They won't apply in this case because the impact was against the building. It doesn't matter. You think the state would listen to their own witness. But no, all they want to do is try and make you think he didn't know what he's doing. It has nothing to do with this case. $200 an hour is not your normal rate. Who is your client in this case? Mike Little. Been on the stand for an hour, made a couple $100. I didn't ask any other experts those questions. None of them. It's not relevant to this case. It's to make you think he doesn't have any credibility. Been on the stand for an hour, made a couple $100. Does that help you in decision making in this process? Does it help you determine the cause of the case? Joseph Warren, been doing this for a long time. He's probably done a little consulting work himself. When do you get paid? I didn't ask any other experts that. I've already explained the two reports. It's not two reports, it's one report. He went through, the state went through the cross-examination, got Kilpatrick talking about that on and on and on. Well, the two reports, or both reports, or the next report. This is only one report. That has nothing to do with this case. It is, and I don't like to just conflate cliches when I argue the case, but I think smoke and mirrors is appropriate in this case. I really do. That's what that's all about. Did you meet with law enforcement? Did you meet with TBI? Huh? So what? He's got all the information to look at. He's not required to do that. Do they want him to spend more money? Is Randy Vega rolling through a stop sign used in your analysis? No. No. That was back 3 blocks ago. It doesn't help anything with the causation of this case. Okay, so he asked about assumptions. You're assuming he would have made it to the other lane of travel. That's an assumption that the state asked Mr. Kilpatrick. You're you're assuming he would have made it into the lane traveling. Okay, what does that mean? Another assumption is if Dr. McGinty had not been there, the pedestrians would not have been affected. So he's asking Mr. Kirkpatrick that. Well, as if that's, I'm not sure why he's asking that. But I do know that during Joe Warren's questioning, the prosecutor asked the same question to Joe Warren, that but for Vega, McGinty would have driven on. It's okay for them to do it, but we can't do it. Another question for Warren. Without defendant's maneuver, would he have crashed into the building? So, it's okay for them to do it, but the implication is not okay for us to do it. So now the cross-examination use PIP in your report. Well, yeah, I did. Yeah, it was mentioned in there, but I didn't testify to it. He didn't testify to it. He didn't put that in front of me. See, your reports are not admissible. They're full of hearsay. They're not admissible. They have a lot of information in them. They're just not admissible. Joe Warren's report is not in evidence. You did not test every reasonable alternative scenario that these vehicles running side by side. That's a question, mistake. You did not test every alternate scenario. What are the alternate scenarios? Did Warren test all the alternate scenarios? Mullinax test all the alternate scenarios? The missing investigative cabinet test all the scenarios? No. You have video. You inspected the scene in 2026 and discovered the area had been changed. No. Sure did. No. Sure did. And he took measurements, but he didn't rely on those measurements, so he testified to you. So, if Mr. Kilpatrick hadn't gone and looked at the scene sometime later, they would have hammered on that. Or you didn't go to the scene, did you? Either way. So, the other statement is dash cam video, 5 frames, so on and so forth. You did the measures, you did the calculations, you double checked them 8 times. Yeah. But he didn't use those in his testimony. That's just in his report. Mr. Kirkpatrick said, I did not make analysis on the video, the dash cam video. What he did with the dash cam video was identify the point of impact. Another line of questioning, old report, new report. There's no old report, there's no new report, there's one report. That's just the way it is. Then he goes back and forth about making a point who his client is, whether it's me or whether it's Mr. Vega. What does that got to do with anything? I hired him. It's not a secret. I hired him to do a job in this case. Just like all the other witnesses in this case. Most of them did. They're hired to work. And several times during the question, you would say, your client, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Vega, oh, I'm sorry, I told you. What's the point of that? Does that help you? Confuse you? Does it mislead you? Your final report does not tell the jury, does not hammer out that there was not an earlier right to left steer around the 3-second mark. He didn't testify. Now he did testify about the right, making the right turns, the possibility of it being assignable or corrected, but he did not testify about that. He didn't talk about the line. The state did, but they can do that. I'm not talking about the hard turn to the left. The last thing you quoted. We don't know what made that hard turn. We don't know how it happened. We don't know if it's a result of the vehicle itself and the action, the control that it's in. We don't know. testify about the full sequence of steering. Let's say do that. Mr. Vega doesn't have any duty to present any evidence in this case. Your steering discussion was select. His response to Kilpatrick was pointing out the obvious. Sorry, Mr. Kilpatrick. So you're accepting this jury to accept your reconstruction as a complete explanation of the defendant's steering behavior. No, he didn't say that at all. He didn't say that. It's a misleading question. It's diverting your attention. But your source data shows more steering activity than you choose to include in your report. So, but you choose to exclude facts that might contradict your conclusions. Okay. He opined in front of you what caused this accident, where the impact took place, and why it took place. That's what he told you. Did the state question about any of those? Did they question about, well, explain your positioning behind the side spot? They didn't ask you that. They didn't ask you to go back to that. Well, explain your position about and your sides behind why you think this is the area of the impact. We didn't ask him that. So you think the reason that the accident occurs is because Dr. McGinty hit the gas. He didn't ask you about that. What he testified to on direct was not challenged by the state. It was all a show, a circus, misleading. Mr. maybe Randy Nagel was going to go into the right lane, but saw this truck behind him going pretty fast, and said, "Oh, I better stay in the at all." Stop. The van is out in front of it. Tinted window. Concern. Concern that he meant to harm me. All that from glancing over and seeing him at the red light. On cross-examination, I asked Dr. Wiggins if I had passing the compact car around 50 miles an hour. He agreed to that. I did that. When he got back, he did that in the right lane, and he got back into the left lane, and then right after that is when he rolled up on the Randy Vega point. I was going to slow down for that. That was the third part that impeded the traffic flow in anyway. He was driving to work late. The van pulls out over halfway into the right far lane. I've talked to you about that. That's not the case. That's not what happened. That's not what we see on the dash cam video. He's trying to soften up his position in this case. So he reviewed the dash cam about a month ago, preparing for his testimony. When he passed the van, his comment was, "I saw a nasty car." I've seen photos of that car. It's been produced. I can see a good shine on the car myself. I'm not sure what the nastiness is. Another way to soften your case, I suppose. Then he caught at a red light. They're a red light. Late for work, catches to a red light. You have 4 cars get in front of him at some point. other day. I guess he ignored me too. And then the caravan stops next to him. Looks over through a very tinted window. You look over, see Vega. Yes. He looks at you. We're both looking at each other. And that's when he became overcome with dread. Prior to that, there was no interaction between the two. Well, if you want to call him pulling out and then have to go around, that would be it. But other than that, there's no interaction between the two. None whatsoever. There's no evidence of that. I couldn't see Vega's ethnicity through the window. I mean, that was something he just kind of volunteered after I asked you about the prejudice statement that he made. But you can see his eyes, you can see his face, you can see his stare. And that was one of the reasons he said he became fearful. He said he didn't say that. Until I presented him with the evidence, he did say that. As a matter of fact, he knew I was getting ready to show it. He said, yep, I did see it. I did say that, Mr. Little. Sorry, I did say that. The only point of getting that out is because that's what he said. That was one of the reasons that he had fear. Heard about carjackings, also there's word about carjackings. So I told police, I chose to drive to get away. I chose to drive to get away. I realized it was the wrong decision. I had to refresh his recollection on that one too. I had to show him that that's what he said, because he didn't remember. In his written statement, you were concerned that Vega was angry with you for getting back in front of him. He wrote that in his statement on the scene, but when he was asked about it at the interview, he's like, what were you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm surprised. He admitted that. I was concerned he meant to harm me. You know, Dr. McGinty is 5'11", 270 pounds. He's carrying 2 firearms in his vehicle. But yet he is afraid. Just Dodge Caravan. The individual's Dodge Caravan is going to do something to him because he looked at it as some kind of perceived threat. So when the light turned green at Woodline, the Dodge van Caravan accelerated ahead of you. Yes, it did. We saw that in the video. It accelerated. I mean, it's completely ahead of it. You need to protect yourself. You hit the gas and go. I do not want Mr. Vega to come over in the left lane. Now, these are words of Dr. McGinty. I'm not making this up. I've heard them. I did not want Mr. Vega to come over in the left lane. You were concerned you were concerned you would block your lane of travel. Yes, sir. There was. I panicked. So that's another explanation. I panicked. So I instinctively accelerated. Panic. His words. I hit the gas. Yes. This is the way your brain is wired. Yes. I can't explain it. It just made me react. I can't explain it. But then I went through that sequence with him, as I reminded you earlier, frame by frame. Are you going up Frazier Boulevard up to that 6 times? Are you hitting the gas? Yes. This is from when it enters the view of the camera when it gets up to the impact side. Hitting the gas? Yes. 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 Impact. Chased him down. Vegas speed, he's trying to avoid it. You would think. That's what's eating in me. Concerned about him cutting me off and keeping me from my lane. He was not arrested. Dr. McGinty was not arrested. He was not charged. He was not cited for speeding, following too close, or reckless driving. After that full confession, 4 days after the accident, no charges, nothing. Nothing. As to McGinty's version of the facts, he told you he felt fear. He's a big man, had guns in his car. This fear and dread may have been a result of his own presence, is what he said. Remember, he denied that statement until like Hugh data for him to look at. Approximate cause, approximate, closer in time. Which table is more approximate to you? Defense table or prosecution table? What's the defense table? And why do I say that? The action closest in time to the crash was Dr. McGinty hitting the gas. Our expert engineer, Gary Kirkpatrick, told you it was Dr. McGinty that hit Randy. He's the one who told you to hit Randy. The police didn't tell you that? Well, there was some inference that when he merged over, they made contact. Well, that was back before. That's supposedly was back before it came into view with the camera. There's no proof of that. The only proof you have now where the contact took place is up close to the intersection. Dr. McGinty was the proximate cause of this accident by his words, by his actions. They keep telling you he jerked over or cut his car. Well, you know from the evidence there were two signs that the lane was ending. And there's some argument today that Randy Vega ignored that sign. There's no proof that he ignored anything. There's no proof he ignored that sign. It's just, as the state says, you still have some road ahead. He didn't. What evidence does he base that statement off of? That argument off of? That he ignored the sign? It's just that's a theory. We know that Mr. Vega was not aware of the road pattern here. He's from out of town. We saw his tag, his combat veteran tag, that said he was from Florida. The rule of the road is, Joe Warren said, don't be where someone else is. Does that apply to Dr. McGinty? He sped up because he didn't want Randy in his lane. He was intentionally moving his vehicle forward faster where he knew Randy's vehicle was. He knew it was there. Again, these two men have experienced two different systems of justice. And the next point, at the next point, Mr. McGinty said he was afraid. He didn't know what he'd do. He wanted to flee. The logical, prudent thing to do is to let Randy into the lane. He knows he's coming over. The prudent thing to do is to let him come over, not don't hit the gas if you know somebody's coming over. That's not the prudent thing to do. That's not a fleeing situation. Speeding up to cut him off from getting over is engaging. That's engaging. That's making a mental intent. Okay, we're getting on. Mr. McGinty's version of the facts, remember he told you he felt fear and dread. He is a large man. I've already talked about that. He admitted after some prodding across that his fear and dread may have been a result of his own presence. So why wasn't Dr. charged with anything? Not even speed, which he admitted to. No one denies that. Well, if we assume everyone involved was doing their jobs correctly, the logical conclusion would be the intentional speeding up to keep someone from moving over. Driving at an unsafe speed is reckless. Homicide. Who's charged with that? The lead investigator, the missing investigator, and Sergeant Molinax, Joe Warren led the investigation, downloaded crash data retrieval on the Bosch software. Where was he? Where was the lead investigator in this case? What information does he have that we don't know about? These two men thus far have faced two different systems of justice. I've said that. We're here today with the ability to make that right wrong, make that wrong right. There's more than sufficient reasonable doubt that Randy is not guilty of any of the homicide charges. He is not the proximate cause of this accident. Like I said before, we don't need an accident reconstructionist or an engineer or a rocket scientist to tell us that. Dr. McGinty tells us that. However, Kirkpatrick did tell us where the point of impact was. And that's how I'm standing right here and arguing to you. Dr. McGinty chased him down. As for the two DUI counts, the state simply failed to provide to you sufficient evidence of impairment or the per se .08. I'd ask you to return not guilty verdicts on all those as well. Definitely return a not guilty verdict on all homicide counts. So I'm going to leave you with this. Two more things. Against these statements, I think they're important. I think they need to be thought about, analyzed, just kept in the brain through your deliberations. Didn't want him to get in front of me. I was speeding too fast for conditions. I decided to accelerate to keep him from taking the lane. His car left ahead in front of me. His car left ahead in front of him. He knows that the car is ahead of him and in front of him. I hit the gas. So what's what he does? He hits the gas. I accelerated. I was acting to the caravan's acceleration. That is the way my brain is wired. My speed was absolutely not safe. Warren asked him if it wasn't for you being there, I don't think the scratch would have happened. That's what's eating at me. I do not get to step up here and speak to you again. The state has the burden in this case. They get to open an argument, they get to close an argument. This is the only time, last time you were here with us. Has the burden of proof, reasonable doubt, proved? Has it been achieved? Has reasonable doubt? Have they overcome the burden of reasonable doubt? Has the state overcome the burden of reasonable doubt? What's for how to get around my explanation, or explain these 2 points? One, no charges placed against Dr. McGinty in full confession. No one ever told us about that decision making. That person wasn't here to tell us about that decision making. Dr. McGinty, number 2, Dr. McGinty's statement that Randy Vega's van left ahead and in front of him, and I hit the gas and I accelerated. Let's talk about that one. About the point of impact, about Dr. McGinty chasing him down over those few seconds. Submit to you, you must return a not guilty verdict in all these cases. As truth dictates, justice demands. Thank you for your time.
Going just a little over 2 hours, we'll take a 15-minute break, and the state will back on that clock says 11:55.
Four or five counties.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'd like to clarify a couple of points before I dive into the main crux of the state's argument. It's easy to misspeak. The defense said that the defendant had fully depressed his brake during the reference to the airbag control module. It was the accelerator. You've heard that that was the brake. They clarified. Then they mentioned that maybe he was aiming for the brake. What impacts motor skills or reflexes? Intoxication. There were statements that Dr. McGinty chased down the defendant. I'm going to trust that. Ladies and gentlemen, please go back and watch the videos, and you will be able to see what exactly. Brings me to another point. Defense said Special Agent Kelly was unaware of the birthday issue on the tubes. She testified she caught the issue and it was in her nose in case file. She then read, at the request of the state, a page from the medical records that acknowledges that the defendant pointed out, hey, on birthday, they went through the right process, they scanned his ID. They got the blood tubes, it has the information on it, it has his name, it has the other important information that they need to keep track of when, of who the blood sample belongs to, when it was drawn. Some time was spent focusing on what was said in opening statements. You've already heard that what the attorneys say is not evidence. We're arguing, but this is not proof, what we say. What matters is what comes from the stand, the exhibits, what you see and hear, not us. I think you've heard the phrase smoke and mirrors several times. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard hours of testimony and seen dozens of exhibits for what amounts to 3 seconds approximately of incredibly poor decisions. Poor decisions by the defendant whose blood alcohol content was over the legal limit both times his blood was drawn. We're going to talk about those 3 seconds for just a little bit, okay? You heard testimony from Investigator Joe Warren, an expert in accident reconstruction with extensive experience in this area. You also heard from Gary Kilpatrick. There was some concern about, on the part of the defense, about why would the state even ask these questions of Mr. Kilpatrick? So you would know who is testifying. What did the experts agree on? They agreed the defendant executed a maneuver that put him in Dr. McGinty's lane. Okay. They agreed that after the first impact, he steered right and then left toward the direction of the family. They agreed the defendant's accelerator pedal was fully depressed. What did they disagree on? Well, one expert puts blame on the person maintaining their lane of travel. That expert assigned no responsibility to the defendant for steering into Dr. McGinty. That's the same expert, and we'll say struggled with questions about whose responsibility it is to make sure that a lane change can be done safe. The other expert said the defendant's airbag control module data was consistent with one driver attempting to cut off another. That expert said this crash would not have happened if the defendant had not steered into Dr. McGinty. You've seen the videos, and they're going back with you. You are the ones who determine what the truth is, and you are the ones who determine how much credibility to assign to these witnesses. So, let's bring this case back to where it belongs. Dr. McGinty's dash cam video shows what happened, plain and simple. The defendant accelerated almost to where he was almost all the way in front of him. The defendant abruptly switched his lanes. The defendant initiated contact. He lost control. The defendant did. The defendant struck the pedestrians, killing 2 of them, seriously injuring another. Let's talk about intoxication. The defendant exhibited poor judgment, poor risk assessment, belligerent, mood swings. At other times he was lethargic, aggressive, impulsive, reckless. He demonstrated poor driving even prior to this crash. Blood alcohol content. We can't forget that. The defense is asking you to disregard every bit of evidence demonstrating how his blood was drawn and then ultimately analyzed by the TBI, how it got into the TBI. Officer Lynn came back and corrected his mistake in front of you and on the record. Corrected mistake. The state provided proof that that sample through the photos has his name on it, has the other information regarding that blood draw. That was then collected by Officer Lynn, taken back to Chattanooga Police Department, locked up, given to Marvin Perez, then taken to TBI for analysis. But that wasn't the only blood draw. There was a second independent blood draw. That one was done by the hospital. Okay, they got the birthday wrong. Again, the defendant corrected the birthday issue. It's in the medical records. Those are going back with you as well. Officer Perez goes, collects that sample, goes to Chattanooga Police Department, gets locked up, then that also goes to TBI. Whose name are on those blood tubes? Randy Baker. The hospital has a vested interest in making sure that the right patient receives the right treatment. Two blood samples, both over 0.08%, drawn independently of each other at different times. Retrieved by two different officers. You've heard the significance of what a BAC over 0.08% means, and you also received the instruction on the inference that you can make. Please feel free to go back and read. This information is important. None of these events happen in a vacuum. The defendant's behavior is not in a vacuum. His poor prior driving is not in a vacuum. The collision is not in a vacuum. Each individual blood draw is not in a vacuum. Each one is a clue of his being intoxicated. Each one supports the other. They all show that intoxication. Whether you believe Dr. McGinty accelerated too quickly, a speeding driver does not erase the defendant's responsibility. A speeding driver does not grant the defendant a free pass to commit vehicular homicide by intoxication. That's not Tennessee law. Ladies and gentlemen, you do not have to leave your good common sense at the door when you go back to deliberate. You can take your own life experiences when you go back into that room to decide the facts and the credibility of the witnesses. Dr. McGinty was the dry grass. The defendant started the fire. Anna and Jonathan are dead because of one person's choices. Octavio told you about how his life has been devastated by this crash. This did not happen because of a speeding driver maintaining his lane. It is not because of bad luck. This tragedy occurred because the defendant, intoxicated and reckless, steered his van into another vehicle. Two people paid with their lives because of that choice. One person seriously injured because of that choice. Hold him responsible. Hold him accountable. Return the only verdict that the law and the evidence support. Guilty.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's come to that time for us selecting alternates in this case. I tell you that we all appreciate all 14 of you being here throughout this long ordeal. The era of COVID has shown us the necessity of making sure that we have not just one alternate, but two. Fortunately, all 14 of you made it through. Two of you who are about to be randomly selected will go to the jury and get your belongings. You can leave. You don't have to talk to anyone if you want to. Talk to me if you don't want to. You certainly can just talk to each other. Go back to the courtroom and watch if you want to. to stick around. I know they certainly appreciate it. Juror 20, Stephen Hughes. You're going to be an alternate in this case. Juror 28, Shireen Meehan, alternate in this case. Thank you both for being here. Again, you can stick around if you want to. Chill out. Just let me know when they're belong to drive a turn. While we're waiting for that to happen, I'll let you know when you get back there and start deliberating, if you have any questions about the facts, you're the judges of the facts. If you have any questions about the law, probably going to be in the jury instructions you're going to have here. Just need some extra copies so more folks can look at it than just the four person. If you still have a question after looking at all this, write it down, knock on the door. You can feel it from the court officer, get it to me. I'll get you the answer as soon as I can. I'll also show you where the light switch is to flip once you have it first. Just let me know when the alternates are ready. Yes, sir, Judge. Also, I understand that lunch is ready, so if you want to eat lunch first, you can come back and deliberate, or if you want to get some work done, just take a little break, take a lunch break at that point, whatever you want to do. Great. Yes, sir. Members of the jury, to enter upon the consideration of this case with due regard to the seriousness of the questions submitted to you for discrimination. You should strive to bear in mind all bias one way or the other. You have no prejudice or sympathy or allow anything but the law and the evidence to have any influence upon your verdict. You must render your verdict with absolute fairness and impartiality. Look at all the facts and circumstances in the proof before you, and make a report to the court such verdict as you think truth and justice require. You may now retire to the jury room for deliberation. We'll give recess to the jury. Have a question or
And they're giggling, you know, sharing gum and shit like that.
I'm gonna go to the bay. I'm gonna take an hour and a half walk. It's gonna be like 2 or 3 hours.